Okay.
Okay, so we're recording part 4 now. Uh, Welcome back to our part 4 of our discussion on what actually happened on May 3, 2023. So far, we have covered the incidents and the violence that have taken place, the deaths, the response of the government, the complicity of the state government at the time, how the central government responded. We have also discussed in detail how different media organizations covered the conflict. So, if we have left out any points, you can remind me, Professor, or we'll move on to the next topic of this discussion. If you
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, so equally important in this conflict is that despite the conflict being in such a large scale, in terms of destruction of properties, in terms of displaced people, in terms of, I mean, the number of people killed overall is still 200 plus. It's a lot of lives. But in terms of displaced people, which is very high, and in terms of the properties destroyed, KSO Cookie Students Organization Manipur uh, collected a list of all the houses and properties destroyed in Imphal by Meiteis, and the combined value was close to 2 billion US dollars, which is like the budget of the state. The entire state itself, their budget is around $2 billion for a year. That's the entire budget of the state burned and destroyed by these Meitei mobs and uh, militias. But the problem I have here is that despite the violence being so overwhelming, the public, especially the Indian public, the media and the public, has been very silent about the scale of destruction it has caused, the violence has caused. Of course, we're not saying that they have been silent. I mean, totally silent. No, no, they have covered uh, some of the incidents and some of the, especially the naked parade and all. It was widely covered, but apart from the highly sensational ones, they have avoided covering most of the other important aspects of the violence, the displaced people, the life, the effect it had on ordinary lives, properties destroyed, the schooling, the education of the kids. What about families who were, you know, laborers in Imphal who relied on handy jobs or all these gigs in Imphal? What happened to all of them now that they have been displaced? So what actually, how come the Indian media and the public at large do not know about what actually is happening in Manipur? I wouldn't say they don't know. Of course they know. Some of the public who try very hard, they know, but it's not readily and easily available for the Indian public. And even if they know that it's Christian versus Hindu and cookies are bad and cookies are uh, mm, you know, cookies are illegal or whatever narrative that the Meiteis have put out. They don't seem to know anything beyond that. So, what do you think is the reason for all of this?
Right. So I think it is a narrative war in that sense, right? So Meiteis are able to fight the narrative war very effectively, partly because they're the center of the state, and that's where the airport is, and that's where the government is. So media people go there first, and they get to hear the Meitei version of the story. And very few of them are able to venture out into the hills at all. Um, there are only a few exceptions, I would say. The print sends journalists, occasionally tries to cover the hillside. So, for example, when there was the attack in Kotruk or a clash in Kotruk, they first went and did a report from Kotruk, and then the same journalist went to the hills and tried to get the version of the cookies. Um, and there are very few instances of these kinds of reports. Um, India is a large country and Manipur is a small state, right? And it's very remote. And therefore, it's not easy and it doesn't seem worthwhile to spend a lot of resource on covering Manipur. Um, and of course, whenever something happens, the news agencies like PTI produce, some cursory summary of what has happened, and that's what gets published, either verbatim or, as I mentioned, either they're published verbatim or the newspaper writes a story around it by adding its own understanding.
No, but then that would be mostly Meitei narratives that they would be publishing, or whatever has been fed to them by the valley based organizations or people.
Yeah, I think the Meitei narrative dominates in everything that comes out in the media. The Meitei narrative dominates, um, and the very first um, win that the Meiteis have had is to paint the conflict as quote unquote ethnic conflict,
Yeah.
right? And so that's an easy answer for the media. There are two communities who have developed frictions and they're fighting each other. Um, and the government and the media is not able to kind of get under the surface of what the government has done and what it should have done and try to understand and unpack that,
Mm.
right? And it's also a big failure of the Indian civil society, I think, because there are plenty of civil society activists who write a lot about minorities in India and about how the government is being effective or ineffective on all kinds of things. But most of those people have been silent when the issue of Manipur comes. And it's because I think it's not only is it remote, but it's a bit too complicated a topic for them to actually understand it. Um,
Can
so
I can
for
I
all these
interrupt?
reasons,
Can I
yeah,
interrupt just for a
yeah, yeah,
second? It is
yeah.
also worth remembering that Meiteis have been fighting against the Indian establishment for a very long time. So they got very good in terms of this kind of narratives. I mean, especially with the army, they have had for a very long time. They were fighting against the army for their independence from India and for against AFSPA and all these things. So they actually they have a lot of experience in this field of narratives. Would you agree to that?
Yes, 100%. Because, I mean, right from the time of independence, this narrative war has been going on. It was going on even before that, with British and the Burmese and so on. But from the independence time,
Yeah.
um, they managed to kind of prevail this narrative that India has forcibly merged Manipur into India. Um, which has happened to every princely state. So it's nothing unusual for Manipur. Um, but Manipur was able to bring up these little facts that they already had a functioning democratic government before India merged them, which was extinguished by the merger. Right. So that's a nice talking point, and that's something liberals will immediately latch onto and say, yes, India has done injustice to the Manipuris. Um, but whether that was really a truly democratic government, I don't know. And just yesterday I ran into a quote from a man called Wangjam Samarjit, who writes these pseudo historical books. So the quote says, B.R. Ambedkar said, quote unquote, as far as Manipur and Tripura are concerned, they cannot elect representatives because there are no local authorities and there are very few educated people. So supposedly B.R. Ambedkar said that in 1950. Now I tried to find where that came from, and the only places it has been published is in Meitei narratives.
So it's
And
not true.
we don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine why Ambedkar would even say that, in what context he would say that.
Literacy
And
level all over the country at the time of independence was almost the same, right? I mean, in the south, it was higher, I guess.
well, in princely states, it is generally lower than in British India,
Yeah. Okay.
uh, in general, except for a few states. Like, Mysore was very advanced. It was probably the only princely state where it was advanced. And states like Jammu and Kashmir, they were close to, places like Lahore. So many people went to Lahore to study, um, and so on. Um, and if you're a small state embedded in within larger British territory, then people would easily escape into British areas and go to school there or go to college there.
Mm,
Um, but Manipur was not of that kind. So that is the first point. Both Manipur and Tripura probably had that problem.
I see.
But British write that the Manipuris, by nature avoided education. They say even, highly placed people are illiterate, and they were proud of being illiterate. Um, in the 19th century, the British said they started one school and it almost closed down because nobody was interested in studying. So things of that kind. And um, as far as I could tell, at the time of independence, Manipur had only two high schools and no colleges or universities. Um, it had a handful of educated people who went to either Guwahati or Kolkata and got degrees, or Banaras. Some even went to Banaras.
Mm,
Um, so a very small number of elites were educated at the time, and so even the quote unquote election that they had would have been very ill-informed one. And that's how, the Praja Shanti Party, which was basically Maharaja's own party, was able to come to power, um, because people just voted, based on their gut feeling rather than any real understanding of what was
I
happening.
mean, did the voting even take place, or was it some sort of a make believe kind of voting?
We don't know. I mean, there were no newspapers at that time either, so we don't know what happened,
Yeah.
right? So we only know what people claim. Um, and so it is reasonable for Indian government to have said you are not ready for democracy yet, which is what the Indian government did.
Mm,
But I don't think Ambedkar would have spoken about it. Ambedkar was a law minister and he was drafting the constitution. That's what his role was. He wasn't in charge of conducting elections.
yeah.
And I mean, if he said it in 1950, it would have been in the context of the upcoming Lok Sabha elections, which happened at the end of 1950 and
Mm,
continued into 1951. And as far as I can see, there was an election. There was an inner Manipur constituency and an outer Manipur constituency. And the inner Manipur seat was won by somebody called Jogeshwar Singh. And the outer Manipur was won by Richard, what's his last name?
no, no,
The
no.
Naga.
It's not Rishang Kesing. No, Rishang Kesing would be too young for that 1950s election. I believe Bob Cutting or some that other Tangkul chief minister that I forgot his name. Yeah, yeah, it would be that one.
The name on the list was Rishang. It didn't have a last name, so I assumed it was Rishang Kaishan.
No, but
But
Rishang
maybe
Kesing
maybe it was a mis-
was alive till until a very few years back. So he cannot be in 1950. Yeah, couldn't be that.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
will invest. I will investigate.
yeah.
So, as far as I can tell, there was an election in Manipur. So, I don't know where this quotation came from. But anyway, so this is the kind of propaganda and information warfare that Manipuris have developed from a long time ago. Um, and if we look at how things happen now, um, well, they have three or four newspapers in English and maybe several others in Meitei, and they seem to have about four channels, television channels, and they have debates about everything every day, which are in Meitei, of course. Um, and therefore, they're constantly generating these narratives for
Yeah.
themselves and for the public. So when national media goes to find out it is these narratives that it gets fed. Um, and the national media doesn't understand any of these languages, right? So, for example, The Wire put out a story this week with the current protests, and the very image they used was this banner of the Meira Paibis protesting. The full banner, full text of the banners was on the front. And of course, Indians would only be able to understand the English banner. They won't be able to understand the Meitei banner. And the Meitei banner says the very first demand is CM and HM should step down.
Yes.
And there should be a military crackdown on Kuki narco terrorists.
Why don't they also demand the Indian Air Force to bomb us, huh? Why while you're at it, why not also
Yeah, but
demand?
the point is that the media thinks they're protesting against the killing of the two children. They're protesting for a grievance, for a human right. They don't understand that they're protesting for crushing the cookies, which is what they really want. The protests are not for the killing. The protests are to demand the crushing of the cookies and for the government to kind of go away and let them do the crushing.
Yes.
And they also want the central forces to be taken away from the valley and sent to the hills. So they do not want central forces in the valley. So these are all extremely political demands, but the national media doesn't understand this.
No, they're
And they
also
should.
very cunning that way, right? Although these sinister and vicious demands, they put it on in their local language, and then all of these reasonable demands, they put it in English. Okay, so when the media sees it, they think these are all translated version of one in local language and one in English. But the reality is, it is totally different. The English version is the humane or reasonable version of demand, but then the Meitei version is demanding military crackdown on cookies.
Yeah, so the fascist demands are in their own language and the
Yeah,
liberal demands are in English.
yeah.
So Indian media gets duped by this.
Oh,
And
they
I
are
was
so
watching this video by Akash Banerjee, who runs the Deshbhakt channel. So he did a show. He's an excellent commentator, and I enjoy watching his commentaries all the time. And so his commentary on this one was completely the Meitei version. So he seemed to be completely sold on the hypothesis that the Kuki militants had killed those two children, even though there is all the evidence points to the contrary, right? Because he says himself that the grenade was launched from the close vicinity, maybe 100 meters away, and there are no cookies there 100 meters away. So even though the evidence is staring in his face that it could possibly not be cookies who had done this, um, he just picks headlines from newspapers which mention cookies in the headline. It's only a Meitei complaint that the newspapers were printing. Why were they printing the Meitei complaint without asking the cookies? Um, or why didn't the newspapers even wait for the police to say something? before before publishing. Uh, and these are, questions I think Indian media needs to ask as well. And I was also noticing, with the Tankul cookie clashes that are happening, again, the same thing is happening, right? So there was a clash at Mulam, we know, and two cookies died and one Tankul died. And Tankul's put out the propaganda that the Tankul person, I think his name was Jamang something, they put out the propaganda that he died at Sinakaital in the Tankul village. Whereas the reality seems to be that he died at Mulam in the process of attacking Mulam.
And the police, Manipur police themselves, put out a press release that this deceased person was died in Mulam.
Yes, but that press release came, I mean, a tweet, I don't know if it was a press release. They put out a tweet at 10 p.m. And by then, all the reports,
Already.
newspaper reports have already been filed. And so, the Telegraph had it in the headline saying that two cookies and one tankul died in separate incidents. Um, so why were they separate? Because, Tankul Nagalang said so. Um, so, so Indian media is not able to figure out, because of the complexity of the problem, Indian media is not able to figure out what to believe and what not to believe. And Meiteis make, full use of that.
And cookies are unable
And
to
then,
even defend themselves in the narrative war.
yeah, and then there is also the fact that a lot of the media have sold out to BJP,
Mm.
right? So we call them Godi media, and it's not even clear whom to cover in under the Godi media title, um, because I mean, if you look at Ravish Kumar's characterization, pretty much every channel is Godi media, right? And the news websites associated with them, including India Today and including First Post and so on. Um, so right now in Wikipedia, we are debating this, which sources to classify as unreliable. So this is a kind of ongoing debate that happens in Wikipedia all the time because we depend on newspapers as sources. So people, come and express. People are invited to come and express their opinions about particular sources, and so we are having difficulty trying to figure out which ones to classify as reliable and which ones not. Um, so so the news media that are pro BJP, either by intent or by coercion or whatever, they've been taking the side of the Meiteis because the chief minister is theirs, and he's a BJP person, and therefore that is supposed to be the BJP narrative. Um, so the let's say pro BJP media, as to be completely matter of fact about it. So the pro BJP media have been pro Meitei media because that is the dominant BJP for them. So even though cookie politicians are also BJP, they have not been able to influence. They've been not able to present themselves as BJP party spokesmen,
Categories.
spokespersons.
There are categories of BJP membership. Christian BJP. Okay, so the lowest tier is Muslim BJP, which is the lowest. Then you have tier two, which is Christian BJP. Then you have the topmost. Okay, even the top also is divided into 3-4 segments. The lower caste Hindus in the top category, but still the lowest in the topmost.
Yeah.
So
Okay, we should also blame the cookie MLAs because they haven't spoken at all throughout the conflict, and
yeah,
they're still not speaking.
they're still not.
Um, and
I don't know what
so,
they're scared of or what they are afraid of.
yeah, politicians should be at the forefront of setting the narrative, and they're not. And even I mean, cookies don't have very many news commentators. It's only the academics who come to comment. Okay, there is Hejang Misao is the only one who keeps appearing on television. But others are academics, and there are only a handful of academics who are willing to go and speak in the media,
No,
and
but
therefore there are not enough
Wilson
cookies.
Hangsing has also appeared in a couple of interviews. I guess I've seen I've seen him appear, and Paulina also has appeared multiple times.
Yeah, only in some specialized debates. I mean, every time something happens, there is a TV debate, right? So, and the person you see the most there is Hejang Misao and um, Professor Biswas, who is not a cookie, but he's being fielded as a as a as a at least if not a pro cookie person, at least somebody with a balanced perspective. Um, so those are the only people you get to see much in the TV. Um, and and the general cookie public is very aloof. They're either shy or they're not ready to show their faces in public, and therefore cookie narrative just doesn't even get started. So the only narrative the media hears is the Meitei narrative. Um, so if cookies did win the physical war, either because they were better trained, better armed, or because they had strategic advantage, they completely lost the information war. Um, and so this is part of what I've been telling the cookies from the beginning, and even in the last episode, we talked about how cookies need to do better in telling their story.
No,
Um,
cookies. I believe cookies. Understanding or the cookie position is that eventually people will find out the truth. But my argument would be that unless you tell them what the truth is or what the reality is, what has happened, how will people ever find out the truth? There was this famous interview of Obama where he spoke about Martin Luther King Jr. He said the moral arc of the universe may be long, but it bends towards justice. This is what he said. And Obama said it bends because we bend it towards justice. If you don't do anything about it, nothing's going to happen. If you it may lean towards justice, but it's not by default that it leans towards justice. You have to fight for it so that you get justice. But our cookie position is leave it. How can we? I mean, Meiteis who have been doing all this Shumang Lila for hundreds of years. How can we fight with them? How can we? I mean, we can't win. It's not about winning, right? It's about putting your perspective out, putting your narrative out, and clarifying what actually is going on. So anyway, if you have completed all the discussion about media, it's fine. If Should we move to the second and final question of our discussion for today, which is we have seen the recent protests. Actually, just a few days back, even last week there was protest, and I believe yesterday there was yesterday there was a protest by cookies as well in all of the districts that they inhabit. Kangpopi, Chandel, Tingnopal, and Chochanpur. All of these districts they had a protest, and in all of these protests, what we can see is there was no tear gas, there was no burning of any security forces vehicles, there was no destruction of anything. Cookie protest seems to be very peaceful, very organized. I mean, what do you call? I wouldn't say organized, but then at least still peaceful to an extent. No confrontation with security forces ever. No damaging of anything. They gathered in one place. They marched towards the DC office, submitted memorandums, and that's it. Uh, on the other hand, every single time Meiteis protest, they get into confrontation with security forces. They start throwing stones. They start burning stuff, tires, this, that. So many things that happens. So what we want to know is why is it that Meitei protests are so violent, and why is it that when cookies protest, the amount of the reaction that we see from the Indian public is very limited. But Meitei's protest, wow, you can see, you go on Instagram, everyone talking about Manipur, 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 and only covering the Meitei narrative. I mean, do you think violent protest actually is a good strategy? Because the Meitei seem to be very successful. So, I mean, if it is a good strategy, that if it is good to protest violently, maybe we should all be doing it. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough call. Well, I mean, as a humane person, as a liberal, I don't think there should be violent protest, but the violent protest is what is winning. And more than violence, I think it is the fact that they're able to exhibit emotion, anger, frustration, um, loss, um, and things of that kind that wins in the post-truth world that we live in. Um, so post-truth means that it is not the truth that matters; it is the emotion. So by exhibiting extreme emotion, they sway people. So if they're so angry, there must be something wrong that has been done to them. If they're so sorrowful, they must be suffering a lot. That's what people think. It doesn't matter whether they actually did suffer um, a lot of loss.
They protest as if they have been raped. They protest as if they have been mutilated. I mean, it is us, it is the cookies who have been mutilated, who have been chopped into tiny pieces, who have been raped, paraded naked, and you don't see the cookies being so good at expressing their emotions. In fact, so many cookies are so still very camera shy. And on top of that, even those who appear on camera, they are like, they are not, they cannot express the overall frustration and overall pain that we are uh, going through. And we anyway, we it's not our nature also to be so dramatic, always. We're just simple people, just we are not used to all this attention and attention seeking behaviors and all this how to
Right.
dress,
So
how to dress for a
yeah, so I
protest.
don't think you should mimic what the Métis do, but you certainly have to figure out how to counter that, right? You can only counter that by being vocal, by coming forward, um, telling your story in hundreds of different ways, um, so that people start wondering, okay, am I getting the right story from Manipur, right? Um, so I mean, you mentioned Instagram, yeah. So I noticed like an explosion of Instagram videos over the last week, and it all seemed to be because of this Lichipriya video that Lichipriya video that came out, as soon as those two kids died,
Yeah.
which I believe got 2 million views. And so everybody who saw that is probably paying attention to what's happening in Manipur and how this constant drama every day of women angrily protesting and getting tear gassed. And so, it all seems to make sense to a normal audience that,
We forget, before we forget, there was an attempt to loot the armories as well this time. I mean, the last time I did we cover this in our last podcast or did we not?
We did.
Okay,
So the CRPF opened fire because they tried to loot their armory. The
exactly.
protest, the mobs tried to loot the armory. Um, and before that happened, there was the Mera Pebi demonstration saying kill all cookies. So that never made it to the media, right? Because it's in Meitei and nobody understands that.
Yeah,
Of course, there are Meitei journalists. They're not going to tell that story, right? Uh,
obviously. Obviously,
uh,
who will go around telling people that my shit smells very bad? I mean, nobody's gonna do that. Yeah.
but there are some cookie journalists around, around the country, and they presumably understand Meitei and they can write about it. But nobody does. I mean, not even the Hills Journal writes about this.
It's very pathetic.
Um, yeah, so that's what I mean. So you don't have to do the same thing that the Meiteis do, but you have to figure out what else you can do in order to counter it. That's what I would say.
Okay. So we have covered a lot of topics today. Actually, what what really happened on May 3, 2023? We began with the incidents in Churachandpur, then Imphal, the people killed, the complicity of the government in this violence, the factors driving this violence, the fascist nature of Meiteis, the genocidal intent of Meiteis. We have covered all of that. And we have slightly covered additional points like the narrative warfare by Meiteis and how the Indian media has completely failed to understand all these uh, manipulations by Meiteis. And to an extent, also in the Ukhrul conflict, you can see that Tangkuls have also copied some of the Meitei tactics. And so the only thing I can say is for Kuki society to wake up and do something about this. I mean, you and me, I don't think we alone can do anything about it, but somehow something has to be done about all these narratives. Of course, fighting on the ground is one thing, but also fighting narrative is also very important. I mean, we left the narrative that this illegal immigrant refugee narrative that was initiated or started by NSNIM way back in the 90s. We didn't tend to it. We didn't try to dispel or we didn't try to destroy that narrative. It survived, and now it's come back to haunt us. And if you don't succeed in dismantling that narrative now, then the next generation of our kids, when I have kids, when everyone are, I mean, they are gonna be called labeled the same thing. So my request to my viewers, especially my cookie viewers, please pay attention. Do all your best. Participate in all these local student organizations. Try to be proactive in media and as well as on social media, and always stand with the truth. Thank you very much, Professor, for sharing us your insights. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah,
All the
we'll,
best.
we'll have another session again in the coming weeks, I hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Mm.